Okay, so on the bench today is a Sony Handycam. This is a Hi-Fi Stereo Hi-8 CCD-V701 sent in to me from somewhere. West Virginia, it looks like. Okay. So let me go and turn this on to the VTR mode, as Sony calls it. And I got the monitor kind of set up right here. And you saw a little flash. Of course, the sync speed is wrong in the camera. But it does actually have an intermittent picture. Sometimes it displays the Hi-8 and the time, other times it does not. But let's go ahead and switch it over into the camera mode. So turn it to off, hold down the green button, switch it over to camera, and take a look at the monitor. For just a moment I saw the time and no tape. But check this out. If I move my hand in front of the lens, you can actually see just a little bit of video information on the screen. And if I get it just right, you can hear audio. Oh, I saw something for a second there. Let me try to get the light better. So I'm moving my hand around and you can kind of see something in the background, maybe just a little tiny bit there. So I'm thinking if I block and unblock the lens just a little tiny bit, there you can see something right there. And then if I move my hand out of the way, you can kind of make out some video for a split second, and then it's gone again. Okay, now let's take it to bits. Okay, well I have it disassembled down into kit form, and let's go ahead and check some capacitors, see how they fare. A couple of things worthy of note. I want to go ahead and show you these two capacitors on this power supply board right there. So let me move the stuff out of the way and I'll get a close zoom in on those. Okay, so there's the two capacitors. One is a 330 at 10 volts, the other one is a 220 at 10 volts. I've left this in autofocus, hopefully it will track. Take a look at all the electrolyte that's leaked out of both of those capacitors. You can see the bottom of that yellow one is just caked with gunk. And let's go ahead and take a look at the bottom of the board. It's actually leaked all the way through the board, and it's worse over here on these two connectors. There's two little white connectors, CN103 and CN101 it looks like. Anyhow, it's those two white connectors right there. So that's going to need to be cleaned. Those caps might actually still be good. I don't trust them with that leakage, however. But that appears to be about the worst of this unit, are those capacitors right there. Let's take a look at the main board and some of the caps on it. So yeah, I realize it's a quite tight zoomed in view right here. All these caps look really good. I don't see any leakage around them really to speak of. There's some pots right there, a regular leaded electrolytic, and then a bunch of surface mounts. And I don't see where the solder has begun to turn black, which is pretty typical of a leaking electrolytic capacitor, especially a surface mount cap. All these look pretty doggone good. Let's go ahead and get the other board here, which are connected by two ribbon cables. And they all look pretty good as well. Anyhow, I'm going to get the ESR meter out and we'll test a few of these things. And I'm going to bet most of them are out of tolerance. And then this board's got a bunch of little electrolytics on it as well. It's some of the luminance chroma processing right here. It says record right there, REC. But I see that big one right there, that 100 at 6 volt, does look like it's leaked a little bit. The solder is not as bright as the rest of them. And you can certainly see that capacitor right there has turned the solder black. That is caused by years of leaking electrolyte, and it's the exact same capacitor. Really good job on the printing on those, by the way. I got to give kudos to the company that printed those. That one's leaking as well. That one doesn't look too terribly bad. There was this one up here. That's a 100 at 4. Same printing. Need to get their inkjet printers updated, it looks like. And might see a little around that 1 at 50. I'm not quite sure. There's some coils. But yeah, doesn't look too terribly bad. Not as bad as I had originally expected. So I thought I'd just go ahead and get the blue ESR meter out here. There is lead integrity 0.00, and we'll just test a couple of these little caps these tins right here and see what they look like. That one looks like it's open. That one is 66 ohms. That thing is toast. And I don't even see anything on that one at all. $19 ohms, almost acceptable. Hopefully you can still see the camera. 65 ohms, bad. 64 ohms, bad. Here's a 22. 35 ohms, bad. Let's get to some of the larger ones. There's another 22. I'd like to see maybe an ohm or less on these. Ooh, 0.44. I like that. That one actually tests good. And another 10. 0.44. Chances are that's a decoupling cap, so there's probably more caps in series with that somewhere else on the board. So let's go ahead and get this other board into view here. Here is a 47 and 0.48. Like I said, these are probably all in parallel. Another 10, 28 ohms. Another 10, no reading whatsoever on that one. Here's a 3.3. Sure that one's going to be perfect. Nope. Open. Another 10, 43 ohms, bad. Okay, well I think I can say pretty safely that this thing is going to need a complete recap of every capacitor if the customer wants it to survive. Now these two boards actually fold together in the unit and they sit together just like that. Okay, let's go ahead and test some of the leaded electrolytic caps on this board. So I know there's a large cap right here. I'm not quite sure of the value. 2.7 ohms, that one's good. A smaller leaded electrolytic right there, 2.3. And then, nope, that's a, looks like a comb filter possibly. Big leaded cap right here. 0.3, that's really good. And then this little one, it looks like it's been leaking around. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it is absolutely open. So I'm not touching the leads together. I'm just touching the trace to the leads. And it is definitely bad. So the big caps, oh, look at that, 85 degrees Celsius. Come on. That's a 330. And I'm sure that one is a 330 as well. That one's a 330. This one that tested bad, can't even make it out. A 10 at 10, possibly? Yeah, I'm going to say it's a 10 at 10. Yeah, there's one. So they've marked these with a blue top. So let's go ahead and test that one real quick. A 10 at 10 and it tests 10. Okay, well, a little bit high in my book, but 10's acceptable. Here's the power supply board that had those two physically leaking capacitors on it. 1.5 and 0.16. So they actually do test good, but they're leaking and do definitely need to be replaced. Now on to some of these with the excellent printing. This one is leaking. And it reads 20 ohms for a 100. That thing is toast. For a surface mount 100, I'd like to see probably 2 ohms at the most. 59 ohms, that thing is bad. This one is definitely leaking. 4.7, not too terribly bad. Could definitely be worse. 47. And open. Absolutely open. So in addition to those capacitors, over here on the camera board, there's a couple little electrolytics down there. And if you look down in here, let me turn off the autofocus real quick, or turn on the autofocus. Hopefully it will track this. Another electrolytic down there. And I'm sure there's something hiding in this little box, which is probably a power supply of some type. You can see another, sorry about the light, it's causing the AGC to go way down. Another cap down in here. Chances are there's more caps under this. So it's going to have to be completely torn apart and recapped if this customer wants it to work correctly. Now onto the mechanism. So as far as I can tell, the mechanism is in pretty doggone good shape. These have an inherent problem where there's a couple little set screws on these loading angle posts. You can actually see one of the set screws right there. And what happens is it causes these things to be just loose. And so that is tape path alignment. Those need to be secured. This one is exactly the same way. And the way to actually adjust these is to have the mechanism fully loaded. And then through these two little holes right here and right here, you can actually tighten those set screws. So that's a after assembly kind of a thing, but it's really hard because this board flips over and there's another board that goes on the bottom, and it's just really hard to gain access to. The only thing I don't like is the loading mechanism is kind of cocked, and so that's caused by the center support rod, which is pressed into place right there and pressed into place right there. One of those is loose, and it's causing this thing to be able to pivot, and it should be solid where it all goes down at the same time. So I'm kind of concerned about that, because as I lock this thing down, it's off just a little bit on one side. It'll probably be okay because it actually has two locks, one on each side, that you have to release to get this open. So to unlock this, there's a tab right there, and if you press the tab, it unlocks. This tab right there, and that tab right there. So that'll probably be okay. There's the bottom of the mechanism. It looks fine. It's got a couple cogged drive belts. They look perfect. Cylinder spins very freely. Nothing wrong with the bearings in that whatsoever. So I'm thinking, just to recap, is all this is going to need. Whether the customer wants to do it or not, that's another story, because this is going to be probably 3 to 4 hours of removing each individual surface mount capacitor, as well as all the leaded electrolytics. And I'm sure there's more caps under this little board, under the shield right here. There's probably a transformer in there for high frequency switching. So I'm going to go ahead and give the results to the customer and see what he wants to do from West Virginia. Okay, well, I may have outdid myself on this one. So I went ahead and actually counted every capacitor on the board, and I tagged it with a little red dot. So I got 47 capacitors on this board right here. I've got 21 on this board. Maybe I missed one. If you see one without a dot, let me know. So 47 and 21 on those boards. So it's got these two capacitors here. I pulled up the service manual. There are 7 capacitors under this metal shield right here. Counted all the capacitors on this board. There are 25 capacitors on this board that need to be replaced. 25. 3 capacitors that I can physically see on this board. There might be more hiding under that shield. I'm not sure. There are 4 capacitors that I can actually see on this board right here. And I pop this open. I can see where it looks like there might be capacitors on this board. I'm guessing 10 on that board altogether. That brings us to a grand total of 119 capacitors on this complete unit that would need to be replaced to get this thing back up and running once again. So I'm just going to estimate that I can probably do 25 capacitors in 1 hour, pulling them off, remounting the caps, cleaning the board, whatnot. So I'm going to have to say we're over just probably 4.5 hours in labor plus the price of the capacitors. So I'm going to give this estimate to the customer and see if he wants to proceed with this repair. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this video up at this point. I certainly hope you enjoyed the somewhat diagnosis of the Sony CCD-V701. Go ahead and leave me a question, a comment, a concern down below, good or bad. I try to respond to the comments when I have time. While you're down there, hit that subscribe button and like this video. It really does help my channel grow. You can follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at NorCal715. You can email me, NorCal715videos@gmail.com. That is the best way to contact me. Please be patient. I have a full-time job and I do these repairs in my spare time. Remember, with your help, we can try to keep these things out of the landfill, out of the recycle bin, and out of the e-waste facility. Everyone, thank you for making it to the end of this diagnosis video. I really do appreciate it. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much for watching once again. Stand by for bloopers. Let's shut off these video lights. And see if that makes any difference. Shut off all the lights. Okay. Now let's go ahead and put my hand in front of the lens here. If I get things just right. And I can't see anything at all now. Shoot. But anyhow, you saw it for a second and you heard the feedback, which is the audio feedback. And of course, now we get nothing. Splendid. Well, that'll be B-roll then. So you can kind of make out some gibberish on the screen. I can see a time display of 0 and the Hi-8 logo. I still have nothing on the monitor right now. And I'm actually messing with the focus right now to see if I can get anything to show up on the main monitor, and it looks like it's probably not going to happen. Anyhow, once again, I'm suspecting capacitors in this thing, so let's just go ahead and tear it apart and take a look inside of it and see, yeah, check a few caps and see what it looks like. Couple of things of note. Okay, so let's go ahead and test just a couple of caps on this board. Here's a 47 at 6 volts. And it tests absolutely open. This one's been leaking. It's a 100 at 6.3. And it reads 20 ohms. It is absolutely toast. Here is another one. Another 100. 59, 60 ohms. That thing is absolutely toast. And see if I can get in here. And if I can freaking really right now. All right, cap tester, stay in the scene. All right, let's take that over. Okay, and testing the capacitors on the power supply board. 1.4 ohms, and that is the 330, which isn't bad. And what is point? Focus, you fuck! Come on! Son of a nutcracker. Okay, onto one of the main boards. This one does look like it's been leaking. And I do see 12 ohms on that one. Oh, freaking auto exposure, come on. All right, let's bump it up a couple stops. All right, let's take that again. Okay, big question. Can I do it without pushing the cap tester off the screen? And if that freaking fly lands anywhere, it is freaking dead. Okay, testing a couple of the leaded electrolytics here. 2.6, that's not too terribly bad. I'll check the value in just a moment. 0.27, that's really good. There's a little tiny one right here. Is that actually a capacitor? Yeah, it actually is. Well, I'm going to say it's open. So yeah, that one is open. And I know there was another big right there. Oh, freaking off camera. All right, I'm done. All right, this will be the final ending. So I certainly hope you enjoyed the somewhat diagnosis on this unit. Counting capacitors, testing a few of them just to determine how many of them actually are bad. And I'm going to say virtually every capacitor on this board is bad. Go ahead and leave me a question, a comment, a concern down below, good or bad. I'll try to respond to the comments when I have time. While you're down there, hit that subscribe button and like this video. It really does help my channel grow. You can follow me on social... Let's start that over. Freaking autofocus was not on. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this video up at this point. Go ahead and leave me a question. Really, right now?